Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor here. Very, very excited because we have just a wonderful woman and an amazing New York Times bestselling author who is really doing some great work to help redefine what we think of when we think of food intolerance, and really showing how this can be at the heart of a lot of the struggles we all face, despite how much of the traditional starve ourselves and spend hours on the stair stepper model we take. A much more sane approach here, and just a wonderful, vibrant woman who does and represents and lives what she says. We've got none other than the New York Times bestselling author of The Virgin Diet, JJ Virgin. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor. I'm like your biggest fan. So,
well, the feeling is definitely mutual, JJ. And I really quickly, I want to get into your story. But the first thing that I want to cover is the thing that you do so well is you have, like your awesome 7 pounds in 7 days with 7 foods, and it's so catchy and it's awesome. But there's also this very deep layer of science and awesome substance below that. Before we get into your story and just all of this great work you're doing, you have an ability to communicate science so sexily, and I appreciate that.
Sexily. Well, you know what? One of the things I saw early on, I've been working with doctors in practice development for the last 15 years. And I kind of realized this early on in my own career when I was a personal trainer. It was me and Body by Jake. And I went, that guy's fully booked and charging 3 times what I'm charging. And I know all the science and I'm telling them the science. And I went, you know what? People buy results, and you have to be able to communicate in a way that's grabby, catchy, et cetera. Otherwise, they won't do it. Mm-hmm. So, the science has got to be there, although you and I both know that there's some amazing science out there that doesn't work, that you can use a study to prove anything. I mean, I've been deep into sugar lately, and it's amazing how they've overlooked things to say that sugar in high fructose corn syrup is safe. So we can use science to prove anything. And so you've got to take science plus real life experiments, which is using our own bodies as chemistry lab to show things. And then you got to package it up in a way that the consumer goes, oh, this is awesome, and I can do it. Because if they can't, if they aren't intrigued and want to do it, and then they can't see themselves being able to do it, we all lose.
Absolutely. And let's dig into that a little bit. What the pitch that you have, which is so awesome and so backed by science and so backed by results, is that there are essentially, at least starting with 7 foods, which can help you to lose 7 pounds if you eliminate them in 7 days. And that's because this really is not about calorie math, and yet, of course, they matter, but it's really about the quality of food we're eating and how some foods literally are not compatible with our body. You talk about that a little bit.
That was poetic. I don't need to say any more. You're doing all my interviews from here on out. What I tell people is, yes, calories count, but where they come from counts so much more. So you want to think of food as information and realize that when you're eating things, you want the message from your food to say, hey, reduce inflammation, slow down the aging process, keep my energy level consistent, let insulin come up to tell you you're not hungry anymore, but then come back down to fasting so that your body can open the doors to the fat cells and use stored fat for sustained energy rather than relying on sugar and making you bonk all the time and need food, right? So, that's the real crux of it, is that yes, it's the 777, but what happened was I was doing testing in doctors' offices for food sensitivity, because my whole background is weight loss resistance. I mean, I realized like 30 years ago that this calories model was just stupid, and I started saying it, and I got so attacked. Can you imagine that, Jonathan?
I can imagine it. And I'm sure, what was it? Who was it? Or the gentleman who proposed that the earth wasn't flat, or Galileo, right? When he was like, oh, the earth isn't flat, they were like, we will burn you at the stake. Yeah. But that's all right. Continue. No one's burning you.
I should really be happy this wasn't, 1,000 years ago. I just start piping up about this. I would have been a witch hunted.
Exactly.
Anyway, so I started going, now what in the world? Like, well, I was working with clients and things weren't working. So I went, okay, they're not going to pay me if I'm helping them gain weight slowly over time. That's not what they signed up for. So like, let's figure out what is getting in the way of their weight loss. And, obviously the first place we know with losing weight, diet's where it all starts. That's not the end all be all. So I'm not going to say it's only diet, because if you've managed to tweak your metabolism, which pretty much everybody has, there's more to it. But luckily, a lot of the diet fixes fix a lot of the other stuff too, like bringing your hormones into balance. And so I started doing a simple food sensitivity test. One way your body can become intolerant to food. Only one of the ways. And what I discovered was the same foods. We were really doing that more because people were tired and their joints hurt and their skin broke out and they looked old and, they were moody and they had gas and bloating. And so we were doing it for all those issues. But it was funny because a couple things were just classic and always happened. Number one, the same foods always showed up on the test. And in 70% of the time, in this specific test, because this is only one way to look at the 3 different ways we can become intolerant to food, and I don't believe we even know all the different ways to test for it at this point. So the best test is your own chemistry lab, your body. But the same foods always showed up, and I loved that when that happened, because 70% of the time you'd see these foods. And when you pulled them out, you were the freaking hero, because people's symptoms went away like that, but they lost weight fast. And Jonathan, I'd like to say I was a smarty pants, and in, a couple months I was like, oh, good foundation for a diet. But no, that wasn't the case. I kept thinking you had to test, even though the same foods showed up. And I didn't put it together as like the foundation of the diet. I was really using it more to help them be compliant. And then one day someone tweeted at me, a chef tweeted at me, and she goes, what are you doing? I keep hearing about you. And I go, oh, I'm doing this thing where I'm pulling these foods out because of these tests, but I need recipes. So she said, well, you do it for me. And then she goes, well, let's do it for our group. And I'm thinking, how do I do this testing for like thousands of people at once? What a nightmare. I thought, well, what if we just didn't test? What if we just pulled out the top foods? And as you said, hey, there's outliers out there. I picked 7 foods. I didn't pick them arbitrarily. But I also kind of looked at it and went, drop 10 foods, which we played around with, drop 20 foods. At some point, people were like, oh, are you kidding me? So I really said, okay, I really narrowed it down to what do I absolutely have to drop? And believe me, I went back and forth on a couple of them going, do I need to drop? But I couldn't. These were the ones that had to go no matter what. And it doesn't mean that they have to go forever. Because if you told someone drop 7 foods, lose 7 pounds, and get them out of your life forever, they'd never pick up the book. Mm-hmm. But I say, hey, we're going to pull these foods out. The reason we say 7 pounds in 7 days is that's the average I see people lose. Some people lose 2 pounds, and some people I've seen someone lose, I think, like 13 or 14. And it's because it's rapidly reducing inflammation. That's how it's doing it. But the deal is you do it for 3 weeks. You let your immune system cool off. And at the end of 3 weeks, then we go and we check it out. And we say, okay, of these 7 foods, the top 4 high fire, high food intolerance foods that are most likely things that really could cause a problem for the long term. Because the other 3 foods, honestly, I tell people, those don't have a place in your healthy diet. And those are corn, peanuts, artificial sweeteners, and more than 5 grams of added sugar. But the 4 top high five foods, which are gluten, dairy, eggs, and soy, we're going to check that one out. We're going to see which work for you and which don't. Because, for a lot of people, eggs were a tough one for me. To me, they're like nature's perfect food. And that's the case 5,000 years ago. But they're no longer nature's perfect food because man got involved and does. I had to go through a whole thing, go, what the heck do chickens eat? Because I'm sure it's not GMO corn and soy, So at the end of 3 weeks, we check it out and we say, which of these foods help you and which hurt you? Because so often we're eating these foods every day, egg white omelets and soy milk and whole grain muffin, because whole grain goodness is so good for you, and egg white omelets and Greek style yogurt. And we're doing that not even because we like it, but because we heard this is what we're supposed to be doing. And, it's so interesting because just a little bit, this is why moderation is a myth, a little bit of these foods on a regular basis creates this whole intolerant response that creates inflammation, makes you crave the very food that's hurting you, and can make you weight loss resistant by creating the inflammation that makes you hormonally resistant, cranks up your cortisol, makes you store fat. It's just a mess. So at the end of 3 weeks, we go back and challenge. And I'll tell you, the toughest part I have with this whole program is that at the end of 3 weeks, no one wants to go back and challenge. They just don't want to do it. And I personally would love to see people keep these 7 out 90% or more of the time for life. But what we have to find out at the end of 3 weeks is how much does gluten have to stay out of your diet? Like if you eat gluten and you double over in stomach pangs, you want to know that at home, not in Las Vegas, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I always say that because I did the egg challenge in Las Vegas and ended up doubled over in stomach pangs. And I was like, that was stupid. I know better, you know?
Well, and JJ, what are those? I mean, I don't want to give away the store. And certainly, folks, you will not, like, JJ's book is not, here's the 7 foods, move on. Like, there's a bunch more there. So I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds with saying.
Like, tell them, you know what? Let's figure that a ton of people will listen to this interview. Some people will want to go grab the book. Thank you so much. And some people will put it into action without. And whatever you need to do, let's just go change the world. I just want to get the information out there. My goal is to have 1 million people do this year. And what I see is as people do this, they become ambassadors because they start making changes so fast. I mean, I have a Grammy Award winning singer on this right now. And I can't say her name yet because she's about to come out with it on a reality show, but she's like, my fellow singers think I got a tummy tuck. That is hilarious. But other people start doing what they do because it's actually very simple. You know, most of the programs out there are really complicated and like, you know, count this and what category is that? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is simple. 7 foods. You pull them out. Gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, corn, peanuts. And I lumped sugar and artificial sweeteners together. But seriously, artificial sweeteners they need to go forever away. Bye-bye. They're the worst thing on the planet. I mean, hideous and hit the road. But we have you pull them out. But the thing that makes this work so well is if I just said, hey, pull those things out and have a nice day. People are like, well, what the heck do I eat? Absolutely. What do I eat? So what we've done is we've gone through with each category, explained what the problems are, you know, and I always start this whole thing with the symptoms test. I think one of the most powerful things that we don't do is connect the dots between what we're eating, how we feel, and what we weigh. You know, I know that if I eat gluten, my fingers are swollen the next day. If I eat dairy, I get a monster, let's hang around on my face forever, zit 2 days later. So I know what these things do to me. And that makes me really look at a pizza in a very different way. It's like now pizza is the enemy, you know? So we connect the dots by doing a symptoms test, pulling these foods out for 3 weeks, giving you simple swaps. So if you're putting soy milk in your coffee, you can use almond milk. If you're doing Greek style yogurt, use coconut yogurt. If you're doing agave, you can switch to Lohan sweetener. So all the here's what you do. Mm-hmm. And what I find so often, in fact, like 99% of the time, is the first 3 or 4 days are brutal. People are angry because they miss those foods. And that I always tell people, you know, I'm a parent, so it's all on how you frame things. Yep. And I would say that's so great because if you're feeling that way, that means that you really had an intolerance to those foods because an intolerance tends to set up the cravings, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so I always tell people if you doubt that these foods are addictive, try to give them up.
Yeah.
And you'll prove it to yourself very quickly.
And that's the thing people do, the one boo-boo people do on the diet. They go, okay, gluten, check, I can do that. Soy, I can do that. Peanuts, corn. All right, eggs, fine. Cheese, no, I have to keep that one in. So I'll drop 6 foods. And I go, no. Nope. You know, it's whatever one you're going, I can do all of those, but that one, that is the kryptonite. That's the one. And you can't sit down on 7 tacks, get up, pull up 6 tacks off the chair, sit back down and have a butt that doesn't hurt.
I love it.
Right?
Absolutely.
So they all go. And I think that's very powerful because I've had people emailing me going, well, you know, because alcohol gets lumped in there with the sugar, obviously, for 3 weeks. And they're like, well, but I don't want to give up my alcohol. I go, if you can't give up your glass of wine for 3 weeks, I think you have a problem. I know that's not going to make me popular. And I love wine like the rest of them, but it's not something that I do at home by myself. And it's not something that, if I ever feel like, hey, I can't go a day without a glass of wine, it's like, I better be able to go a week without a glass of wine, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Otherwise, there's something wackadoodle there, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, and JJ, what I love about what you're describing here, which again, like is just, I think, such a powerful and empowering paradigm shift, is that the answer is not just to take your existing style of eating, which likely includes heavy doses of especially the gluten, artificial and natural added sweeteners, and just eating globally less of everything. Like just take the tax and make them smaller tax.
I love that.
And then that's the answer. No. Like that's doubly bad, because now you spend a bunch of time trying to shrink the tax, and now your butt still hurts. So you're like, well, I might as well just give up completely, because I tried and it didn't work. So now I know it's hopeless. And in fact, I'm going to feel badly about myself, because I'm going to feel like I'm broken.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to get into this self-fulfilling cycle of negative self-talk, where if you focus on food quality, meaning like these foods, and it's amazing, because I think there is a cultural shift taking place, because you've identified these 7 categories, many of which of them overlap with the paleo type effort, many of which overlap with a lower carb type effort, many of which you can see our culture is shifting to say food isn't evil. It's just that not everything that's edible is good for everybody.
Right.
And that is such a key and powerful distinction, because now we can love food again. Let's just eat the foods that support our body, and that's unique. I mean, there's definitely some commonalities, certainly a lot of commonalities, but let's focus on what we are eating and let the wisdom of our body speak to us, rather than trying to overpower our body through starvation.
Yeah, that works every time.
That consistently works.
Yeah, that so consistently works. We should all be insane and continue to do this thing that doesn't work, but do more of it. And I do believe, though, that there are foods that are evil.
Oh, absolutely.
I do believe there's food that's non-food. And I remember back, I've been at this a long time, but I remember going to the store and I bought a lot of Diet Coke. I was a total Diet Coke fan. And I bought all this diet popcorn. And I remember looking at my cart, and I was spending a freaking fortune on this stuff, and these Alba 77 shakes to buy. I was spending all this money to get no calories. I thought, wait a minute. It's like the less calories, the more expensive it is. You're getting nothing.
You're paying more for less.
You want to buy really high quality calories. I
had the same, JJ. I think we're great minds maybe here, because I was at in the office the other day, and I was looking at the vending machine, not personally because I was going to get something from it. I was brewing some green tea, but I saw that there were some options identified as low calorie, and they were all these puffed crisps. And I thought to myself, I'm like, what? How in the heck? If I'm hungry and I ate 100 calories of puffed crisps, I should just eat Kleenex. That's not. What is that possibly going to do to help me not be hungry anymore?
No, it'll act. And the funniest part is you eat that little puff crisp, which those 100, I always love that people say you should snack all day long. I go, really? So let's look at that. Because I'm betting you're not snacking on wild salmon or grass-fed beef. I'm just betting. I'm betting you've got those 100-calorie snack packs that you're snacking on. And they're basically carbs with a little fat, a great combination. Let's, put some damaged fat with some carbs together, not even good fats. And then let's eat that all throughout the day. So your blood sugar is then going to come up. Your insulin's going to come up. Your fat stores are going to get locked. And you're going to need more sugar soon. We've turned people. I always like to say you should be a hybrid. You can use sugar as you need to in your explosive exercise, which you want to do for your brain, but you want to burn fat as your primary source. You don't want to be some old guzzling car like that just has to run on sugar, And the minute you start to run out just a little bit, you need another 100-calorie snack pack.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. No, and it's JJ, one of the key myths, right, which we're battling here, I think, is this eating fat makes you fat. And the challenge is, if you just look out the window, it makes sense that the earth is flat, except the earth isn't flat once you have a basic understanding of the way the earth actually works. But it makes sense on the surface, right? Yeah, it's flat. Otherwise we'd fall off. And the concept of, if you eat fat, it makes you fat. On the surface, if you have no knowledge of human biology, it kind of makes, okay, you eat fat, it makes you fat. So I'm trying to think of a similarly simple and immediately intuitive way to describe what eating fat actually does. And tell me what you think about this. Eating fat makes your body good at burning fat.
You know, I think there's a really, really good analogy in the exercise world that I always try to explain to people. I go, you know, if you're doing all this stuff that really during the exercise burns the higher percentage of fat, then your body is going to want to be able to store more fat back so that it has it ready for the next exercise session.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If you're doing high intensity exercise that uses more sugar and also gets rid of those enzymes that help you store fat, after the exercise, your body's going to want to store sugar in your muscles because they're empty. Those little suitcases of energy are empty. And it will not have the enzymes to store fat around because your body burned them off. So it's, to me, the same. If you give your body a lot of something, you know, it's going to then figure out, what should I be doing, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, you're giving it a lot of fat. It goes, okay, I got to be really good at burning this off.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of sugar. I got to figure out, what the heck am I going to do with this? You know, it must be a famine. He's eating all this sugar.
Well, and just to unpack that, JJ, to get a little bit deeper into the biology for the listeners, like we talk about, I eat sugar, I get used to burning sugar. I eat fat, I get used to burning fat. So let's imagine we're eating fat. Our body's getting used to burning fat. And then let's imagine that, let's say we ate 300 calories worth of fat. And let's say our body has burned that off and now needs additional energy. Well, our body could think we're starving, but why would it if we still have fat available, which many of us do? It just happens to be sitting on our hips rather having just passed through our lips. Mm-hmm. And if our body is already used to burning fat, it doesn't necessarily say, oh my God, I'm starving, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to burn up muscle tissue. It's just going to say, oh, okay, yeah, there's more fat over there. I'm going to go burn that because I'm good at burning fat. But if we're eating these 100-calorie snack packs and conditioning our body to burn sugar, let's say we ate 300 calories worth of sugar. Let's say we burned through that. Our body's like, I need more sugar. It's looking around. Our body doesn't store sugar. I mean, it does, but not for all intents and purposes what we're talking about here. It's looking around, it sees fat, but it doesn't see sugar. So it says, well, I want more sugar, so I'm going to give you all of these crazy carb cravings.
Yeah.
Versus going after that stored fat because its preferred fuel source is sugar, so it demands that preferred fuel source. But by eating fat and conditioning our body to prefer burning fat as fuel, even if we don't have enough external energy, we've got plenty of internal energy in the form of stored body fat.
And, you know, the thing I always tell people, because I always think the proof is in the pudding, probably not the best metaphor, but, you know, it's like they hear it so often. We've become so fat phobic, but the people who don't eat fat are soft and old. And if you want to have great hair, skin, and nails, you've got to eat fat. Mm-hmm. And you got to digest it. One of the other unfortunate things I see with a lot of people is they've just really tweaked their fat and protein digestion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they're just, you know, and a key sign of that is you're eating fat and you're still very dry. Now that can be something related to hormones, especially estrogen or thyroid metabolism. But if those are all in line and you're still, you know, eating fat and, you know, you've got very oily stools and your skin's not looking so hot, check your fat digestion.
Well, I love talking about that fat digestion, JJ, and I think that's a good segue into one thing I wanted to make sure we covered in particular, and that was your experience, because I hear the stories like this all the time where you'll have a female who had potentially around the pre or postmenopausal phase, which has decided to take control of her life and to focus on the quality of the food she's eating, and as a side effect, her husband ends up eating differently, not because he wants to, but because she's really the one who is managing the health of the household. And so they make these changes, and the husband, despite his best efforts not to, begins to see dramatic changes in his appearance. Whereas the wife or the woman does not see them. And as we call it, like sort of side effect fat loss, where it's like the individual who's actually trying to do this is not seeing the results, but the one who is not is. What is the core difference between men and women as we get older, and how can we overcome that?
Well, and now here's where it will be a little bit different. Let's say the man is in his late 50s and the woman is in her early 50s. They might kind of almost match there.
Okay.
Because they're both going through their pauses. But, the challenge is, first of all, women are fat storers by nature. Women have less muscle mass. And, I remember once when I was on Dr. Phil, it's like, oh yeah, of course women have a tougher time losing weight than men, but no explanation. It's like, well, it's this way for survival. I mean, we're supposed to have more fat so that we can survive the famine, so that we can feed our babies, even if we're not getting fed. This is all here for a reason. However, we can steal some of the secrets from the men. And here's some of the secrets that I see from the men. For women, we have a much, and I'm sorry, Jonathan, I always say the women are Aston Martins and the guys are VW Bugs.
Continue.
All right. Okay. But I mean, hormonally, you got testosterone and, cortisol, thyroid, right? Okay. We've got testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. I'm leaving out like obviously DHA and all this other stuff, but, cortisol, thyroid. We cycle. And that changes everything. We also have much less muscle mass than you guys do and a higher body fat percentage, right? And we have a much more intricate tie-in with our moods and serotonin and dopamine than you guys do. You guys tend to, and this is just the way we're set up. It's our DNA. You guys don't generally stress long-term over things. There's a fire, you put it out, and then you wait until the next fire. Now, if there's a little, you see a little bit of smoke somewhere, there's smoke over there. And when it gets to be a fire, you go put it out. We see smoke and we worry about the smoke. Is the smoke going to turn into anything? What should we do about the smoke? We call our girlfriends about the smoke. We're concerned about the smoke. We're stressed out about the smoke. We have cookies because we're concerned about the smoke. We better have the cookies so that we're not as stressed. You see what I mean? So we're totally set up differently. And I think some of the lessons that we can learn here are, number one, build more muscle mass. Okay. That's a big key. And also, number two, deal with your stress better. You look at a man, he comes home, and I took this very cool course from Alison Armstrong called, it's called Man 101. We call it the Man course, but it's called Understanding Men, Celebrating Women, or Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. And she talks about the fact that a man comes home from work, goes and sits on the couch, and he does this transition thing, right? Mm-hmm. And he de-stresses and does all that. Not women. Women have a home. It's their second job. Then they have a first job, and there's no end ever on any of the jobs. And we just don't do the things that help us handle stress. And if we are not handling stress well, we are going to go through menopause with the worst possible situation where the only hormone going up is cortisol, which is going to make us store more fat around our waist, make us more insulin resistance, which then will make us have more estrogen dominance, less progesterone, problems with testosterone. It screws up all your cycles. And then estrogen's going to come down too, and you're a mess. Mm-hmm. So, the best thing you can possibly do to prepare yourself for menopause is focus on handling on stress and putting yourself at the top of your totem pole instead of the bottom or not even on the list. Yep. We really are the CEOs, of our personal healthcare system, which is our family. And the best way to be the CEO is to lead by example. So if you think your kids are going to go to bed on time, eat healthy and exercise, and you are, staying up late, getting up too early, eating on the run and blowing off your exercise, that's what your kids see and that's what your kids model. So you really have to get out of feeling like you don't have time or it's selfish or whatever into going, okay, I want to set the best example for my family because I recognize that by me taking care of myself, I will be more effective at home, but also my kids will then do that. And guess what? I'm setting this up for future generations.
But I'm actually that's the clap track right there. I love it. I don't have the simulated clapping, so I have to do it myself. But here, JJ, I love it, and it reminds me of, and at the risk of being trite, but it is the canonical example, right? When you're on an airplane, the constant message you hear is please affix your own oxygen mask before you assist others, because if you are deprived of oxygen and you're not living fully, you cannot help anyone else live fully. And I feel like a lot of us are depriving ourselves of our life source. And if we ever hope to help anyone else, we've got to put on our oxygen mask first, right? And that's really what we're talking about here.
It's not about being a martyr, baby. It's that martyrdom thing. Get rid of it. Be a role model. Step up and lead.
And please understand that in doing that, it's not a selfish thing. In fact, it's very selfless. But another analogy I like to use is, imagine you want to teach somebody math, but you don't take the time to learn math. Like, you can never teach anybody math unless you learned it first. So I mean, if we spent all of our time just being like, I just want to teach math, but you never actually took the time to learn it, well, then what good are you? And if you want to teach health and you want to teach these wonderful habits that you're describing here, you got to do them first.
Yeah. It's just like, I remember back when I used to see people one-on-one, and you'd have someone who wanted to quit smoking and they just couldn't do it. I go, well, do you want your kids to smoke? Oh, no, they'll never do that. I go, guarantee they will. Mm-hmm. Guarantee it. Mm-hmm. You just can't ever ask anybody to do something you yourself are not willing to do. But to me, that's the ultimate empowerment, because that means that you can be that starfish being thrown back into the ocean. You can totally change the world based on you, because especially now with social media, it's like you do it and it gets passed on and on and on. And I mean, that's healthcare reform.
Absolutely. And it's going back. I've used this quote probably 7 times now on this show, but it is just so true. And it's that the Gandhi saying of be the change you want to see. And literally, if I were to say one tip based on our conversation here, it is like the easiest and most profound way you can help others is by helping yourself in this way. Personally, that's what I believe.
Yep. Me too. I've got that coffee mug.
I love it. Well, JJ, obviously, the book is doing amazingly well. And it's the book again, folks. It's called The Virgin Diet, The Virgin Diet. Apparently I'm going through some hormonal changes. It's called The Virgin Diet, and it is a fabulous read. And of course, you've got a bunch of awesome information on your websites, jjvirgin.com and thevirgindiet.com. But what's coming next?
Oh my gosh, I just sold a 3-book deal. Yay. Except then all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I just sold a 3-book deal. So it's kind of like, But so the Virgin Diet Cookbook is up next. And then after that, the book, I don't know if I'm allowed to blab about it. I'm such a blabbermouth too. But then the next one after that, which I'll just say it's really looking at one of those 7 and exploding it out there in a big way. It's my absolute, I'm going to start a revolution on it, and that'll have a cookbook too. So, and a new PBS show around that one. And I actually think it'll be bigger than this, but a lot of stuff in between then and, now and then. So
that's awesome, JJ. Well, I really appreciate all that wonderful work. And I really appreciate all that you do to help bring this message of food quality and hormonal health to the mainstream, because I feel like oftentimes individuals who are versed in the science are amazingly knowledgeable and are amazingly passionate, but one tweet from a misinformed celebrity or one reality television show that focuses on just starvation and chronic cardiovascular exercise can so easily undo the effort of all the well-meaning bloggers in the world. So I appreciate you going out there onto the mainstream a bit and helping to spread this message, because I think that is so important to bring the mainstream around to the importance of quality over quantity. So thank you very much.
Oh, and thank you back. I love your work.
Thank you so much, JJ. I appreciate it. And folks, again, her book, New York Times bestselling, The Virgin Diet, an excellent read. Her websites, thevirgindiet.com and JJ Virgin. And as you could tell from our talk today, just a wonderful woman, a wonderful author, a wonderful speaker, and a wonderful example. So JJ, thank you so much for being with us.